Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome back to part 2 of our Through the Ages series on the history of the thief, or is it the rogue? Because going forward, the thief name no longer applies to the class, and is instead just sort of a concept for what the class can do, as today we are taking a look at the 3rd edition era iterations of the rogue class. So we've got 3.0 D&D, which came out in the year 2000. We have 3.5 D&D, which came out in the year 2003, and we have the Pathfinder Core Rules, which released in 2009. It'll be interesting to see how the rogue class has evolved from the thief that we had in the previous editions of the Dungeons & Dragons game, and we're just going to dive right into it here. So we're going to set these two aside for now. And also, just because it seems like whenever I try to record videos and talk, I start losing my voice these days. I'm not entirely sure why, although I think I was snoring pretty hard last night. But I do have some refreshing Pepsi Zero here to get me through the video. All right, so here we go. We have the 3.0 Player's Handbook. This came out in the year 2000. 26 years old at this point. In fact, I think it even came out, maybe, was it in May, or may have been June or July. So we're looking at probably about the 26th anniversary of the release of the original 3rd edition here. And 3rd edition was a huge change from the previous versions of the D&D game. 2nd edition AD&D was very much a continuation of the 1st edition AD&D rule set, with a few minor modifications and maybe some quality of life improvements. You had the THAC0 system instead of the combat matrices, so that the players could figure out their to-hit rolls instead of the DM having to do all of that for them. Kind of things like that. But 1st and 2nd edition were very similar, like they're similar enough that I think you could pretty easily run a 1st edition AD&D scenario using the 2nd edition AD&D rules, and you wouldn't have to change much. The same could not be said for trying to run a 2nd edition AD&D module for the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. This was the version of the game that created the D20 system that we now use even to this day, so 26 years later, and multiple other RPGs have also adopted similar mechanics. So let's go ahead and find the rogue class in here, shall we? We got the ranger, and here we've got our rogue. So the 3rd edition D&D books, they started to introduce their iconic D&D characters, and the class descriptions are kind of written as if they're addressing the character presented. So, for example, the rogue class here is represented by Lida, the halfling rogue. So all of the, when it's going through things, it tends to use like the she or her, language. Whereas Sovalis, the ranger here, where he's a male, they tend to use like he and him and all that stuff. So when I'm going through and reading it and you see like she coming up all the time, in the 3rd edition books, it's because they was based off of which iconic character they were talking about, especially in the class descriptions. Later on, I think they just kind of flip-flop a little bit between the two, but anyway, let's just sort of get into it here, shall we? So we do have our 20 level progression for the rogue, and I did have somebody ask why I referred to the class in the first video as the Rouge, and the simple reason is that where it's now known as the rogue, the placing the U before the G changes the word to rouge, which is the French word for red. I am Canadian, so I did have to take French classes for, 5 years? 4 or 5 years? Maybe even 6 years, I can't remember now. It was quite a while. And, nothing stuck except for the fact that I can tell you with all certainty that the French word for red is rouge. And it's just a common spelling mistake. Like, I've done it a bunch of times where I've written down R-O-U-G-E as opposed to R-O-G-U-E, and it's one of those things that even to this day I have to think about it for a moment before I write down, which one it is. So it's just one of those things to note here. We're going to go over the main class features here first before we get to one of the bigger changes in the edition, which will be something that we'll be talking about in the two other versions of 3rd edition that we'll be looking at here after this one. But the rogue class still retains their d6 hit dice. They still use dexterity as sort of their primary ability. However, in 3rd edition D&D, you no longer have a prime, like a prime requisite ability score. Like, you don't have to have a 9 in your dexterity, for example. You could, in theory, have a dexterity that puts you with, like, negative modifiers, because in this one, again, you don't have, like, subtables for what your attributes do. You just have a simple modifier, more like basic D&D in that manner. So a 10 or 11 gives you a +0, and a 12 or 13 gives you a +1 on rolls using that attribute. A 14 or 15 will give you a +2, a 16 or 17 will give you a +3, and an 18 or 19 will give you a +4. And for the player character class, you generally didn't start with more than an 18. You could get up to a 20 theoretically, which would give you a +5 bonus on rolls. But again, you don't actually have to have like a prerequisite anymore. So you also get to assign where you want to put each stat. So you're not forced to have like bad numbers in places you don't want them, unless you rolled bad numbers and the DM won't let you re-roll. But that's a whole other kettle of fish there. So the rogues' proficiencies, instead of having like a set number of proficiency slots and they have to choose which weapons they can actually use, they just simply are able to pick up and use any of the weapons from the rogue list. So they can use, let's see, so they're proficient with the crossbow, let's see, the dagger, dart, light mace, sap, short bow, and short sword. Medium-sized rogues are also proficient with certain weapons that are too big for small characters to use, such as the club, heavy crossbow, heavy mace, morningstar, quarterstaff, and rapier. They're also proficient with light armor, but not with shields. Not even the humble buckler there, which is kind of interesting. And so, you know, they kind of have their typical rogue armor, typical rogue weapons, but again, you don't have to actually choose, like, proficiency slots anymore, like you had to in, like, 2nd edition and 1st edition AD&D. The next big ability we have here is Sneak Attack. This is the updated version of the Backstab, which was always a difficult ability to pull off in the past. While certain editions didn't necessarily specify exactly what steps you had to go through in order to use it, they all relied on the fact that the opponent had to be unaware that the rogue or the thief was coming up behind them specifically in order to attack them. In 3rd edition, there is no rules for facing, so attacking somebody from behind is the same thing as attacking them from the front or the flanks. The idea is that the character that you're attacking can pivot, you know, within their space. So they kind of got rid of like the facing rules, which is something that was meant to kind of streamline, I guess, the combat system there. So with that in mind, the concept of catching somebody by surprise isn't as much of a thing in 3rd edition as they tried to make it in earlier ones. There were still like surprise rounds and things of that nature, but the sneak attack was made a whole lot easier to accomplish. And instead of it doing like double the weapon dice or, you know, triple or up to quadruple the weapon dice at higher levels, the sneak attack feature now adds an extra d6 to the attack rolls. The successful attack roll damage rolls, I should say. So the way that you achieve this is you have to be flanking your enemy. So in order to flank, you have to have your enemy here, and then you have to have yourself and your ally who are diametrically opposed from one another. So this can be done on diagonals or, you know, extra y-axis. It doesn't matter how you achieve the flank, but as long as you are in the flanked state, or flanking state against your enemy with one of your allies, then you get to pull off the sneak attack on any attacks that you actually hit with. So although the sneak attack damage is one of the few types of damage in the game that's not actually multiplied when you score a critical hit, which is another mechanic that became sort of default in 3rd edition D&D. So a critical hit, basically, if you rolled a natural 20, or some weapons have a wider range where you could get it on like a 19 or 20 or an 18, 19 or 20 roll on the die. You get to roll again, and if you would hit with that second roll, then you get to do a critical hit, which could do like twice the damage of the weapon, or 3 times the damage, or even 4 times the damage, depending on the weapon. But that's based on the weapon and not the backstab ability anymore. And then the sneak attack dice would be added on top of that. For example, the paladin's smite attack is actually doubled like everything else, like their normal damage. So if they score a critical hit with their smite, they get to do double their level to the attack. So anyway, digress here. Now, the sneak attack is mostly done in melee. However, it can be achieved at range as well. So the opponent has to be considered to be in point-blank range, which is within 30 feet of the rogue, and they would have to be unaware. So they would have to be in a state which is called flat-footed. So 3rd edition, for the combat system, they have a few different types of modifications to your armor class. With armor class going up, depending on how good your armor is, as opposed to your armor class going down based on how good your armor is. So if you are flat-footed, for example, you get to add your armor bonus to your armor class, but you don't get to add your dexterity because you're not aware that the attack is coming. So anything that revolves around the concept of being like agile, like your dex, or if you had any dodge bonuses, even your shield bonus won't apply to those rolls because the idea is that the shield bonus might. I have to look that one up again. It's been a little while, but your dex and any dodge bonuses won't apply because you're unaware of the attack coming. So you can do sneak attack with a ranged weapon as long as they're within 30 feet, and they are unaware of you. So you can't flank with a ranged weapon, generally speaking, although 3rd edition does have exceptions to literally every rule, but as a general rule, they have to be unaware. So you'd have to be like hidden or like maybe invisible or something like that for them to be denied their dex bonus. And then there's things like if you use a weapon that only does subdual damage, then the sneak attack is also subdual damage. And that's a whole other thing that I definitely don't want to get into here. And the sneak attack was a bit limited in what it could affect. So it could only affect living creatures with discernible anatomy. Even though it also can affect like aberrations, which famously have like anatomy so bizarre that it can make you go insane. But you can't sneak attack things like undead, constructs, oozes, plants, or incorporeal creatures because they don't have vital areas, and they also would be immune to critical hits. So there's that. Then the rogue also has the ability to use their search skill, which we'll talk about skills here in a little bit, in order to find and disable traps. They can use it to find traps. They have to have disable device, which is another skill, in order to disable traps. But again, we'll get into the skill system here in a moment. But basically, they get to make a roll to search for traps, and if they succeed, then they can attempt to disarm it. Later levels, they get an ability called Uncanny Dodge, which starts off by just allowing them to maintain their dex bonus to armor class at all times. So it effectively makes it so they cannot be caught flat-footed for the most part. Eventually, it gets them the ability that they cannot be flanked unless they're flanked by a creature of like 4 levels higher than them, or they might even have to have the same ability, but they have to be like 4 levels higher. But then also in 3.0, Uncanny Dodge also gives them bonuses against traps. So starting at, let's see here, at 11th level, the rogue gains an intuitive sense that alerts them to the danger from traps, giving them a +1 bonus on reflex saves made to avoid traps, as well as a +1 dodge bonus to armor class against traps, and then increases to +2 at level 17, +3 at level 20. Whoops, no, this number is wrong. It goes up to +3 at 14th level, or +2 at 14th level, +3 at 17th level, and at 20th level goes up to +4. Starting at 10th level and every 3 levels thereafter, so 13th, 16th, and 19th, so 4 abilities total, the rogue gains access to a special ability of their choice. So these special abilities are listed below here, and we'll go over them. They do pretty much transfer over to all the other ones, so I'm going to talk about these ones now. And if any different ones come up, then we'll discuss them when we get to them in their various editions. So the first one that we have here is the Crippling Strike. A rogue with this extraordinary ability can sneak attack opponents with such precision that their blows weaken and hamper them. The damages from the sneak attack also takes 1 point of strength damage. Ability points lost to this damage return at the rate of 1 point per day. I think that actually does change with 3.5, so we'll take a look at that one. Then they get the defensive roll. So the rogue can roll with a potentially lethal blow to take less damage. Once per day, when a rogue would be reduced to 0 hit points or fewer by damage, with death taking place at -10, so that is a big thing. From a weapon or other blow, but not a spell or special ability, the rogue can attempt to roll with the damage. She makes a reflex saving throw with the DC equal to the damage dealt, and if she's successful, she only takes half damage from it. She must be aware of the attack and able to react to it, so she has to be able to have her Dex to AC. Although by the time that you get to that level, you've got that from Uncanny Dodge anyway. So again, I think it would only be effective if like a rogue of 4 levels higher tried to use this ability against you, that you would have to kind of worry about it there. They can also choose Improved Evasion, which actually we should go back to the Evasion ability. So at 2nd level, the rogue gains the Evasion feature. So essentially, whenever they make a reflex saving throw for like spells or abilities that allow you to save for half damage, if you fail the save with the evasion ability, you take the damage as normal. So it's considered a failed save. You would take the full damage from something like Fireball or a Dragon's Breath weapon. If you succeed on the roll, however, you take 0 damage from the ability. So if you're making a reflex save against a Fireball and you succeed, the Fireball does 0 points of damage to you. If you're doing it against a Dragon's Breath again, you would take nothing from it. As long as it's a reflex save specifically that is designed for you to take half damage if you succeed on the save, then you can use the evasion ability. Improved Evasion is basically the next level up, where even if you fail the roll, instead of taking full damage, you would only take the half damage that you would normally take, that everybody else would take, on a successful save. So a failed save with Improved Evasion is the same as a successful save for anybody without the evasion ability. And of course, if you succeed, you still take 0 damage. So that's one thing to note there. The Opportunist ability. So once per round, the rogue can make an attack of opportunity against an opponent who had just been struck by for damage in melee by another character. It does count as your attack of opportunity, which is a reaction, which you normally only get 1 per round. But if you had the Combat Reflexes feat, for example, which allows you to take additional attacks of opportunity equal to your Dex modifier, you can still only use the Opportunist ability once per round. So you wouldn't be able to stack that with the Combat Reflexes feat, unfortunately. And then we've got Skill Mastery. So the rogue selects a number of skills equal to 3 plus her intelligence modifier. When making a skill check with one of these skills, they can take 10, even if stress or distractions would normally prevent them from doing so. She becomes so certain in her skill that she can use the skill reliably, even under adverse conditions. And then Slippery Mind. This extraordinary ability represents a rogue's ability to wriggle free from magical effects that would otherwise control and compel her. If a rogue with Slippery Mind is affected by an enchantment and fails the saving throw, 1 round later she can attempt the saving again, although she only gets the 1 extra chance, or you could take a feat in lieu of the special abilities. So feats are kind of a whole other thing. They're kind of minor abilities that you can use to sort of flesh out your character here. So those are the main rogue features here, but one of the big aspects of the rogue class in the earlier editions of the D&D game were the thief abilities. So you had that table where you had percentage chances to perform certain tasks. Well, that no longer exists in 3rd edition, and instead has been folded into the skill system, which is a universal system that all classes get. And the way that it works is each class gets a certain number of skill points that they can use to purchase ranks in skills at each level. So, for example, here, the rogue, if I can get it on the screen here, They get 8 skill points plus their intelligence modifier. And at first level, you get to multiply that number by 4. And then every level after, so for levels 2 through 20, whenever you gain skill points, it's 8 plus your intelligence modifier. Humans also add an extra skill point at every level as well, so that's another thing to sort of keep in mind. So it does make intelligence kind of important for the rogue. And the rogue does have quite the list of class skills. Like, the only class that has more class skills than the rogue is the bard, interestingly enough, although the bard also doesn't have as many skill points. Now, I want to take a look at this here and go to the actual skill section, because this is one of the things that was kind of... It's a cool system. I just think that none of the classes really do get enough skill points. So, for example, we can see the rogue here, the big dots, so under RROG, the big dots are the ones that are considered class skills, the small dots are what's considered cross-class skills, and anything with an X in it is something that they cannot do at all, because it's just not a something that is associated with the class. The ability, or the ones that you cannot buy ranks in because they're exclusive to other classes, that died with 3.0. But the way that buying ranks works is at level 1, and well, for every level, you have a maximum number of ranks that you can put into any skill, or class skill, I should say, equal to your level plus 3. So at first level, you can have up to 4 points in any class skill. If you're buying a cross-class skill, the maximum number of ranks that you can have is divided by 2. So if you're trying to get a cross-class skill, like for example, if the rogue wanted something like, let's see here, if they wanted something like Wilderness Lore, which is a cross-class skill, they would have to, they could only have up to 2 ranks at level 1. The other problem with cross-class is that not only are you limited to half the ranks of the class skills, but you also have to buy your ranks at a 2-for-1 ratio. So for class skills, if you put 1 skill point into it, it equals 1 rank. For cross-class skills, you have to put 2 skill points into it to equal 1 rank. So you're kind of like double whammied with cross-class skills in 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, where it costs twice as much and you only have half as much potential for the skill. We'll see how that evolves, especially when we get to Pathfinder, but it is kind of an issue. And the other issue is that if we're using this to substitute for the rogue class feature, the rogue or the thief abilities from the percentage tables, we got to take a look at what they would do, what they had as abilities. So for number 1, they had the ability to hide and move silently, right? And hide and move silently are 2 separate skills, so we have that. They had the ability to detect traps using their search skill, and you have to use disable device in order to actually disable the trap. So that's a 4th skill. In order to open a locked door, you have to have ranks in the open lock skill. So open lock and disable device are 2 separate things. So that is now 5 of your skills. The other things that rogues were able to do would be, you might want to have like a good perception, so they have the ability to detect noise, for example. Well, in this there are perception-based skills, but they are spot for visual and listen for auditory. So that's up to 7 skills right now, and the rogue also had an ability to climb walls. So there's 8 of your skill points right there if you want to try to duplicate most of those thief abilities from earlier editions, right? But there's other things that the thief class or the rogue class can do in this version of the game. For example, you may want to have social skills. Like if you get caught, you may want to be able to talk your way out of trouble. So you may want something like bluff, which is now into a 9th skill point. If you're looking, to basically be able to like forge documents or be able to understand different like languages and stuff for writing and script, then that's decipher script, and that would also be forgery. If you want to have contacts within, the ability to just like be able to learn information that may not want to be made available. Well, that's gather information. So now we're up to 12 different skills, and you're just not going to be able to take all of them. Also, you may want to know if somebody's getting ready to punch you in the face, right? Like, or if somebody's lying. Again, because you have the most skill points in the game of all the classes, you might want something like Sense Motive to know that if the person that you're dealing with is trying to cheat you or things like that, which again is something that a thief might find useful. So there's all kinds of different skills. Pickpocket is its own skill. Right, so again, we've got all of that stuff. So we're up to like 14 different skills when you only get 8 points if you want to duplicate or do things that the rogue is known for. So you'd have to have an 18 intelligence and be a human to kind of get to the point where like maybe you can start doing other things that you might want. They can also use magic devices by using the use magic device skill. In order to, but you have to make skill checks to like trick the item into thinking that you're a certain class and a certain level and blah blah blah. So that's like 15 skills there. So the problem with the rogue is that there's so many things that you want to be able to do with them, and that they are good at doing, but you just never get to do all of those things, right? Unless you start sacrificing the amount of ranks that you put into your skills, which generally isn't a great idea, right? I mean, the way that I typically make my characters is I will determine how many skill points that I get, and then I will basically put one rank into each class skill that I can until I don't have any points left, right? And I always max out the skills that I want to use because DCs and things like that, they climb through the roof as the game goes on. Like if you're running published adventures, most NPCs or villains or enemies that use skills or whatever, they will have their ranks maxed out almost always. So it's just one of those things where like you want to be able to keep up. So you kind of want to keep your skill points maxed out, and you just don't get enough. And you know, God help you if you want to take any of these, cross-class skills, because you're dumping twice as many points into it, and your maximum number of ranks is only half of what you can take with your class skill. So you'd have to spend, like, for first level, to max out a cross-class skill, you would have to take, like, it would be 4 points for a class skill to get 4 ranks, or you could spend 4 points on a cross-class skill to get 2 ranks. It's just absolutely kind of brutal. And regardless of what class you are and how many skill points you get, it just never feels like enough. So with the rogue, you kind of have to figure out what kind of rogue you want to be. Do you want to be someone that's good at finding traps and disabling them and opening locks and things like that? Do you want to be good at picking pockets, or do you want to be more socially adept? You want to be more able to read people or to manipulate people, right? So there's certain things like that you kind of have to worry about when it comes to the rogue class. And so the skill system was definitely a cool concept, but just no class in the game gets enough skill points to do the things that they should be able to do. Like, truthfully, I think the rogue should have 10 or 12 skill points, especially in 3.0, where like you got things like, I don't know how many skills are different between 3.0 and 3.5, so I'll reserve judgment on that. But I think that, with your intelligence, because again, you're still going to want your dex as your best ability score. So you're kind of in a situation where your second highest score now, you're usually going to go after intelligence because you want a decent amount of skill points. So I think if they would have had like 10 or 12 skill points, and then every other class in the game has like 2 or 4 more skill points, or at least a better list, like your fighter, for example, has an absolutely pathetic list of skills. And even though fighters usually are the ones that take watches, in like cities or in camps, stuff like that, they don't have either of the perception skills of spot or listen as class skills. So they have to burn twice as many points, and they can only have half as many ranks, and something that they would use all the time. It's ridiculous. The barbarian, I think, has listen but not spot. So like why is that the case? Like if it's like meant to be like a hunting thing, like they can hear their prey, but you think they'd be able to also learn how to spot them too. It's just such a weird sort of system. Like I like it, but I just don't think anybody gets enough. Especially like the fighter again only gets 2 skill points plus their intelligence modifier. And guess what's not going to be a priority attribute for the fighter at any point in time is going to be their intelligence. So it's a good system. It's just something that it needed to be tweaked, and they needed to figure out ways to give you more skill points. So that you can sort of do the things that you want to do. Especially, again, the rogue, because if you're trying to duplicate the thief tables from the previous editions, you've burned all of your skills, unless you have like a super high intelligence and maybe that extra +1 for being a human. But yeah, anyway, that is the rogue class. I guess the one last thing we'll go back to look at here is their sneak attack ability. I did touch on it here, and I did say it does an extra d6, but that's not always the case. So the sneak attack starts at +1d6, and every other level thereafter, so first, third, all the way up to level 19, it adds an extra d6 to that roll. So it goes all the way from just +1d6 up to +10d6 at level 19. So it can become a pretty powerful ability, and they get to do this anytime they would hit against an enemy that is flanked or denied their dex bonus in any way, shape, or form. So that is definitely an interesting ability and becomes very, very powerful. And we'll see if that ability gets modified at all throughout future editions of the D&D game. But yeah, being able to do multiple attacks, because they do have an attack bonus here. So at level 8, they get 2 attacks per round, although you're not likely to hit with that second one for a little bit. And at level 15, they get 3 attacks per round. So with 2 of them having a solid chance of hitting. So, like, you know, being able to do, let's just say at level 17, let's just say level 19. Let's just say at level 19, you have a pretty good chance of hitting with your first 2 attacks. So just imagine, 2 attacks for your weapon, plus an extra, like, fireball added on with no save or anything. Like, just an extra 10d6 on top of your damage per attack. And if you get a sneak attack, or if you get a attack of opportunity, and your opponent's flanked, when the attack of opportunity would be triggered, then you get the sneak attack there as well. So it can be pretty brutal. It definitely became one of their hardest features to use for a class that had all of their features pretty hard to use at low levels, to one of the easier ones to be able to use. But they just maneuver into a flank. You know, you can take 5-foot steps each round to shift your position around so you can kind of get into that flanking position a little bit easier. And once you're there, you're doing extra d6s, all the way up to 10d6 at level 19. So it's definitely a pretty solid ability. So the rogue class overall is fairly decent. Like I said, the only thing that I would say is really a negative for them in this edition of the game would have to be simply the skill system, which for no class works perfectly. Every class needed more skill points in the rogue, even though they have the most of the game. The rogue also was one that needed more skills. So that was 3.0. So in 2003, 3rd edition underwent a revision because there were definitely some issues with the fact that they didn't actually playtest 3rd much beyond level 10. And things got pretty broken pretty quickly. So they ended up releasing 3.5, which retweaked and retooled a number of things. We're not going to go as thoroughly into the rogue class in this book as we did in the initial one, because this is kind of built off of that one. So we're going to look mostly at the differences here, but let's get to the rogue class. And there are some notable changes here. So things like sneak attack work the exact same way. They start at 1d6 level 1, and then by level 19, they get up to 10d6, so first level and every 2 levels thereafter. They get their uncanny dodge ability, which gives them their dex bonus to their armor class at all times. And then they get improved uncanny dodge, which is sort of the same thing as they can't be flanked, but they just have the 2 different terms now, because you can get uncanny dodge from multiple classes. So if you had uncanny dodge from one class, and then you would gain uncanny dodge from a second class, then I think you get bumped up to the improved uncanny dodge at that point. So that's kind of the reasoning behind just calling it an uncanny dodge and improved. But they do essentially the same thing. Improved uncanny dodge just means that you can't be flanked. So yeah, if a character has uncanny dodge, from another class, the character automatically gains improved. Yeah, so I just want to make sure that was correct there. However, an interesting change is their trap sensibility. They actually get that earlier than they would before, because before, your uncanny dodge had to go through Dex to AC, cannot be flanked, and then the next version of it after that was the plus bonus versus traps. So in this game, Trap Sense became a separate ability broken out from the Uncanny Dodge one, and they actually get it at level 3, whereas Uncanny Dodge is a level 4 ability. Now in 3.0, Uncanny Dodge was a level 3 ability, and you didn't get the Trap Sense until like level 10 or 11 or something like that. So here you get it at level 3. So you start to get the ability at a level where that +1 bonus actually might make more of a difference. And you also get increases to it every so many levels thereafter. So let's see. So I think it's every 3 levels. So you have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and then 18. So instead of getting up to like +4, I think was the highest bonus in the 3.0 book, your Trap Sense does get up to +6. So that's actually pretty good. And then they get their, again, like, so they get their sneak attacks, they get their evasion abilities, they do get their thief abilities, or their special abilities, I should say, and they are pretty much the exact same. I think the only one that is slightly different is the Crippling Strike, which now does 2 points of strength damage per hit, as opposed to 1. And the reasoning behind that is, because you only lose a bonus at, like, every even number that you're going down, if you had like a 17 strength and you got hit by the Crippling Strike in 3.0, then you don't take any, that doesn't change any of your math. So by taking 2 points of strength damage, you're now getting -1 to hit and damage because of that Crippling Strike, right? So that was kind of the thought behind that. I think everything else is pretty much the exact same as far as that goes. Like the defensive roll uses the same thing, the saving throw once per day if it would knock you into negative hit points. Against the DC equals the damage that you took. If you succeed, you only take half damage from the blow. And you have to be aware, you get an improved evasion, which works the exact same way. So evasion that you get at level 2, I think, here, which feels way too soon. But if you fail to save, you take full. If you pass the save, you take nothing. So it's literally all or nothing with regular evasion. And with improved evasion, if you choose that rogue ability, or special ability, then you can take only half on a failed save and nothing on a successful one. Opportunist works the same way, you get the attack of opportunity, but you can only take it once per round. Skill Mastery works the exact same way. Slippery Mind works the exact same way. So, again, pretty much the features remain fairly similar. However, one of the other changes to the rogues is their weapon proficiency now is that they are proficient with all simple weapons, as opposed to just like a select list. However, they're also proficient with the hand crossbow, rapier, sap, short bow, and short sword. And they're proficient with light armor, but again, without shields. So the size of the character no longer determines which weapons they can use, because weapons are sized to the character. So a halfling using a rapier does slightly less damage than a human using a rapier size for them kind of idea. That's a whole other thing to get into at another point in time. But the other thing I want to take a look at now here are the rogue skills, because I want to see if they've improved or not. And I don't think they've improved a whole heck of a lot, to be honest. So we do have the rogue class. Now, the one thing that has changed, again, in this version of the game is that there are no longer any class-exclusive skills. So there's no skills that would have an X for them that you cannot take. However, everything else is pretty much the exact same. Some classes did see an increase in their skill points, which is great, but not enough of them did. And even though, once again, the rogue has the highest amount, they still don't feel like they quite have enough. So for the rogue, again, if they want to recapture or reproduce the thief tables or the thief abilities from AD&D 1st and 2nd edition, you would once again need to take the following skills. So you'd have to take climb, because they had climb walls. You would want to take spot and listen for your proficiency. So you did have like hear noise. So you could just take listen if you wanted to, but again, a lot of times you're getting called on to make spot checks instead of listen checks. So you want to take both of those. To be stealthy, like to hide in shadows. To be stealthy in general, you would want hide and move silently, which are still 2 separate skills. You would still want the search skill, which gets you up to 6 now. And then again, you would want Disable Device and Open Lock, which are still 2 separate skills. So there's 8 skill points there. Unfortunately, not much has changed in the skill system for the Rogue. It kind of sucks, because again, it's what their class is really good at, besides Sneak Attack. Sneak Attack became the class's best feature by a mile with 3rd edition D&D, and it became the main focus of what the Rogue would do, with the skill system being like a big part of what the Rogue can do. But because again, if they want to do all those things, then that they used to be able to have the percent table for, which was never a great option either, because a lot of those percentage chances to succeed were really awful. But you just don't have enough skills, and it's just unfortunate. Like, you'd have to have again, a high intelligence, and you may want to be a human to get that extra skill point, right? So there's just certain things that weren't really great when it came to like the Rogue got very few improvements. Like, the biggest improvement for the Rogue class was their trap sensibility, which got broken out from Uncanny Dodge, and they get it earlier so that they get an extra +2 versus the 3.0 class, but everything else is still pretty much the exact same for them. They were one of the classes that got very, 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 very few revisions, whereas other classes in 3.5 were heavily modified, like the Ranger, for example. So, yeah, not a whole lot to talk about when it comes to the 3.5 Rogue, because they're pretty identical to the 3.0. Their skill selection is still still not enough for the things that you'd want to do with the Rogue, so you still have to choose between, like dungeoneering and like social stuff, right? Which you want to do more, because to do all the Rogue abilities that you used to be able to do in AD&D, that burns your 8 points like instantly. So I don't know. This is, again, I think the Rogue needed 10 or 12 points, like the plus their intelligence plus 1 for being human. I think would have made a huge difference. The rank system still works the exact same in 3.5 as it did in 3.0. So you could have a number of ranks for class skills equal to your level +3. And then for cross-class skills, it was half of that number. And you still had to spend 2 skill points to get 1 rank in a cross-class skill. So the skill system didn't get changed at all. Like, some of the skills were dropped. Like, Innuendo was no longer a separate skill, which was weird that it was a skill anyway to begin with. But, for the most part, everything's still pretty much the exact same list that we had before. Some things may have changed, but, like, for example, Pickpocket was rolled into Sleight of Hand. But Sleight of Hand, in later versions of the game, well, I don't want to get too much into that, but in later versions of the game, Sleight of Hand becomes like your thievery thing. So, like, your disabled devices and your open locks would all be part of that one skill. In this version of the game, though, it's not. It's still just, it's still like separate skills in order to do all of those things, which just kind of sucks. But anyway, so yeah, a very quick look at the 3.5 Rogue, because not a lot changed. However, we do have some pretty drastic changes to the Rogue class in the first edition Pathfinder core rulebook here. So, one of the things to note with the well, let's just go over the class features first, and then we'll get into the skill system, because there are definitely some changes for the better here that might make the Rogue a little bit better versus the 3rd edition version of it. So, the Rogue for Pathfinder 1st edition. First of all, we'll take a look at the things that are pretty much the exact same. The skills are still 8 per level, plus your intelligence modifier, times 4 at level 1, and then 8 per... actually, no, it's not times 4 at level 1. That's the thing we'll talk about with the... that we'll talk about with the skill system. I'm sorry. So they only get 8 plus their intelligence modifier skill ranks or skill points per level. Their hit dice was actually bumped up to a D8 from a D6, so they actually got a little bit hardier in terms of their health and the things that they can go up against. They are proficient with the same things, I guess, all simple weapons, plus the hand crossbow, rapier, sap, short bow, and short sword. Proficient with light armor, but not with shields. Their sneak attack works the same way. So if you're flanking your opponent, then you get to add your +1 d6, and then it gets up to +10 d6 at level 19. So that hasn't really changed at all. It's not the sneak attack damage is not multiplied on a critical hit the same way that it wasn't in 3.0 and 3.5. Now they have the trap finding ability, which is kind of interesting. So the rogue adds half their level to perception skill checks made to locate traps and disable devices. Skill checks are a minimal of +1. The rogue can disable device to disarm magical traps. So they kind of gave trap finding a little bit of a boost. Evasion works the same as what we had before. The trap sense works pretty much the same way that we had before, so it gives them a +1 on reflex saves against traps that are triggered, or +1 to AC against traps that are triggered. And then every so many levels that increases it to a maximum of +6 at level 18. They do get their Uncanny Dodge and improved Uncanny Dodge abilities, so they maintain their dex to their armor class, the first version, and then they cannot be flanked with the improved Uncanny Dodge. So those are pretty much all the same. And but one thing that's also been changed for the rogue, which is actually kind of cool here, is a couple of things. So they get talents starting at lower levels now, and they have like rogue talents. So the ones that we saw before, we start getting at like midway through the character progression. Those are considered to be advanced talents. So starting at 10th level and every 2 levels thereafter, you get to choose either from the regular rogue talents or the advanced table. But for the regular talents, so the rogue gains experience, gains a number of talents to aid and confound her foes. Starting at 2nd level, a rogue gains 1 rogue talent, and she gains 1 for every 2 levels thereafter. A rogue cannot select an individual talent more than once. So one of their abilities is called Bleeding Attack. So a rogue with this ability can cause living opponents to bleed by hitting them with a sneak attack. This attack causes the target to take 1 additional point of damage each round for each die of the rogue sneak attack. So at 4d6 sneak attack, they bleed 4 points of damage. I'm assuming that would also last for like 4 rounds, I guess, or the rounds would also be tied to like the amount of time would also be tied to the sneak attack dice. So that's pretty brutal. Bleeding creatures take that amount of damage every round at the start of each of their turns. So at the start of their turn, not the end. The bleeding can be stopped by a DC 15 heal check. The application of any effects that heals hit point damage. Bleeding damage from this ability does not stack with itself, so bleeding damage doesn't add to bleeding damage, which makes sense. And bleeding damage bypasses any form of damage reduction. So that is interesting. They get combat tricks, so a rogue selects this talent gains a bonus combat feat. So there's like feats. We're not going to go through all those. But that's kind of neat. Finesse rogue, so a rogue that selects this talent gains weapon finesse as a bonus feat. Ledge walker, this ability allows the rogue to move along narrow surfaces at full speed using the acrobatic skill without penalty. In addition, a rogue with this talent is not flat-footed when using acrobatics to move along narrow surfaces. I must have missed one here. Did I? Bleeding attack. Combat trap. Oh yeah, I guess I... I guess I did miss a few things here. Fast stealth. So this ability allows the rogue to move at full speed without taking a penalty. Ledge walker... Oh, okay, they're just in separate things here. Major magic and minor magic, okay. I was wondering why minor magic comes after, but it's just because it's alphabetical. So, major magic. We'll do minor magic first because it just makes more sense. A rogue with this talent gains the ability to cast a 0-level spell, or a 0-level spell from the Sorcerer Wizard's list. As a spell-like ability, their caster level for the ability is equal to the rogue's level, and the save DC is equal to 10 plus the rogue's intelligence modifier. A rogue must have intelligence of at least 10 to have that talent. And then for major magic, a rogue with this talent gains the ability to cast a first-level spell from the Sorcerer Wizard list 2 times a day as a spell-like ability. The caster level for this is equal to the rogue's level. The DC is 11 plus the rogue's intelligence modifier, and they must have an intelligence of at least 11 to select that ability. A rogue must have minor magic in order to take major magic. Okay. And, the spell for the minor magic can be cast 3 times per day. So cantrips in Pathfinder actually are normally unlimited. whereas they were spell slots in 3rd edition of 3.0. Again, not normally something that pertains to the rogue class, but instead of being able to do them an unlimited number of times per day, if you have the minor magic ability, then you can do it up to 3 times per day. Quick disable, so it takes a rogue with this ability half the normal amount of time to disable a trap using the disable device skill. Resiliency, once a day, a rogue with this ability can gain a number of temporary hit points equal to the rogue's level. Activating this ability is immediate action and can only be performed when she is brought below 0 hit points. This ability can be used to prevent her from dying. These temporary hit points last for 1 minute. If the rogue's hit points drop below 0 due to loss of these temporary hit points, she falls unconscious and is dying as normal. Rogue Crawl. While prone, a rogue with this ability can move at half speed. This movement provokes attacks of opportunity as normal. A rogue with this talent can take a 5-foot step while crawling. Slow reactions. So opponents damaged by the rogue sneak attack cannot make attacks of opportunity for 1 round. That's actually a pretty cool one. And then stand up. A rogue with this ability can stand up from a prone position as a free action. This still provokes attacks of opportunity for standing while threatened by a foe. So that's normally, I think it takes your move action to get up. So this one, it's free, and you could take a move action if you wanted to afterwards, or a 5-foot step, or things like that, which is kind of neat. Surprise attack. During a surprise round, opponents are always considered flat-footed to a rogue with this ability, even if they already acted. And then Trap Spotter. A rogue with this talent comes within 10 feet of a trap. She receives an immediate perception skill check to notice the trap. This check should always be made by secret, or in secret by the GM. And then weapon training. The weapon, or the rogues that selects this talent gains weapon focus as a bonus feat. So that's pretty cool. So they gained a large number of lesser abilities, but they start getting those talents at level 2 instead of up to level 10. And then the advanced talents are pretty much the same. So we got the Crippling Strike. A rogue with this ability can sneak attack opponents with such precision that they weaken and hamper the foe, so they are damaged. They take 2 points strength damage. The defensive roll, which the same way works once per day, you would take half damage from the attack. Dispelling attack. Opponents that are dealt sneak attack damage by a rogue with this ability are affected by a targeted dispel magic, targeting the lowest level spell effect active on the target. The caster for this ability, or the caster level for this ability, is equal to the rogue's level. A rogue must have major magic as a talent before they can take dispelling attacks. So that's pretty cool. Then you got improved evasion, which was discussed before. Opportunist, which we discussed before. Slippery Mind, which we discussed before. And then a new ability they get is called Master Strike. So upon reaching level 20, a rogue becomes incredibly deadly when dealing sneak attack damage. Each time the rogue deals sneak attack damage, she can choose one of the following 3 effects. So the target can be put to sleep for 1d4 hours, paralyzed for 2d6 rounds, or slain. Regardless of the effect chosen, the target receives a Fortitude saving throw to negate the effect. DC equal 10 plus half the rogue's level plus the rogue's intelligence modifier. Once a creature has been the target of a Master Strike, regardless of whether or not the save was made, that creature is immune to the rogue's Master Strike for 24 hours. Creatures that are immune to sneak attack damage are also immune to this ability. So that's pretty cool. Again, every class kind of gets something at level 20 that is just a little boost in power. So that's really cool to see. But the main thing I want to take a look at here is the skill section for the rogues. So the rogues will get 8 plus their intelligence level or modifier per skill points every level. But there's a few other ways to get your skill points increased. So I think humans get +1 skill point every level in this version of the game as well. However, in the 3rd edition D&D, there's something called your favorite class. Now, I think in for 3.0 and 3.5, your favorite class is only really considered for things like multi-classing and experience point penalties for that. However, in this version of the game, I think you can just get to choose your favorite class at any when you're doing character creation. So I just want to see if I can find that here. Oh, ability modifier is a little bit too far, so we want to get into the races. Familiarity. Society relations. Okay, I was trying to find exactly where that is, but I know it's in here somewhere. But yeah, you get to choose your favorite class. So like it was kind of set in stone for 3.0 and 3.5. Like a halfling was rogue, the elf was wizard, the dwarf was fighter. But it only mattered for multi-classing, because if you multi-classed and you didn't have your levels within one of each other, you would take a penalty on experience points unless your favorite class was one of those classes. So the way that favorite classes work here is you just get to choose your favorite class. I'm wondering if that's in the skill description here. And I'm not going to dwell on it too much. Yeah, okay. But yeah, when you take a level in your favorite class. Okay. So, right. So, when you take a level in your favorite class, including level 1, you do have the option. There's a couple of different things you can do, but one of the options is that you can take an extra skill point. So that's already pretty cool, right? That you have the ability to, when you're leveling up, especially if you're going to be a single class character, there's no reason not to choose the class that you're playing as your favorite class. So that gives you an extra skill point every level if you wanted to. There's other things you can do with your favorite skill. I forget what the other ability is. Oh, I think it's an extra hit point. So I think you can take like +1 hit point or +1 skill point. There are other books that introduce other things that you can put those bonuses into. But yeah, I think it's +1 hit point or +1 skill point. And with this one, you buy skills, hear me out here, at a rate of 1-to-1. It doesn't matter if it's cross-class or class skill. If you spend 1 skill point on a skill, you get 1 rank. And there's no... And the cap on ranks is equal to your level, and it no longer matters if it's class or cross-class. So if a rogue, for example, wants to take survival, which is not a class skill for them, each skill point they spend on that is equal to a rank, and your maximum ranks is equal to your level. To offset this, the first time that you spend a skill point in one of your class skills, you receive a +3 bonus in that skill. So there's still a reason to take your class skills, because the first time you spend a point in that skill, you get a +3 bonus. So that kind of offsets the ×4 at level 1, but it just makes cross-class skills so much better. They finally fixed that, and not only did they fix that aspect of the skill system, but they combined several skills that were similar into one. So, for example, before, to do hide and move silently, to do spot, listen, and search was 5 different skills, right? So here, to do, you have perception, and perception is spot, listen, and search rolled into 1 skill. So that takes 3 skills from 3rd edition 3.0 and turns it into 1. Your stealth is hide and move silently combined. So those 5 skills to hide and move silently and to spot, listen, and search are now just 2 skills that you have to spend points on. Your ability to disarm traps and open locks went from 2 separate skills, like disable the device and open lock were 2 separate things. Now they are 1 skill. So to disable traps and open locks, along with all those other things in the previous version of the game, that was 7 skill points. Here, it is 3, right? So the skill list has been made so much better. The skill point system has gotten so much better that I no longer feel like the rogue doesn't get enough, right? Especially considering that you can get an extra skill point every level if you chose rogue as your favorite class. So you can actually have 9 skill points every level if rogue is your favorite class and that's the one that you choose. So, and yeah, so they put together so many things here. Sleight of hand is now, I think that's still pretty much the same as what it was before, But yeah, let's just say that you want to make a rogue that's good at hiding, that's good at talking their way out of trouble, that's good at like disabling locks and or traps and opening locks. That's good at things like what do we have here? Like to be able to use like magical devices. Like you can do all that now with like a much smaller number of skills to need to be used, right? So you use magic device, 1 skill point, right? Stealth, 1 skill point. Sleight of hand, again for like pickpocket, you're gonna want that one. Perception, you probably want that one, right? Stealth, you're gonna want that one. I think we covered that one. So let's start over. Use magic device, stealth, sleight of hand, perception, disable device, bluff. Right? So you're at 6 points. Assuming you have no intelligence, and assuming that you aren't using an extra skill rank or skill point every level for your favorite class, you still have 2 things that you can do whatever you want with. Right? Sense motive would probably be a good one to have there as well, so that's 7. But you still have more and more options, right? If you want to be good at climbing, that's still 8. But let's just say you have, a 14 intelligence, and you have +1 skill point because Rogue is your favorite level. That still gives you more skills to work with every level, right? So they combined enough things here, and I think they made the skill system work a lot better, right? They got rid of all the penalties for cross class are gone, right? You just don't get that +3 bonus the first time that you put a skill point in there. But that's still not the end of the world, right? It means that a fighter that might not have perception as a skill, which I think they still don't, but they can still put points into it and they can still be good at it, right? As opposed to 3rd edition, where they could put points into it and they would suck at it. So, like, you could spend a crap ton of points to be awful at something, or in this one, you can be pretty competent at anything. So, the skill system was definitely changed. The rogue special talents, the rogue talent things there, again, that's a really cool change as well, because they get lesser ones, but they start getting them earlier. So I think overall, obviously the latest version of the class is going to be the best, but it's surprising how little changed in the rogue class between 3.0 and 3.5, right? Like their trap sense got a little bit better, some of their other abilities got a little bit marginally better. Like if they took the crippling strike, right, ability type of thing. But the Pathfinder Rogue is easily my favorite version of the 3rd edition era rogue classes. So let me know in the comments below, what is your memories of the 3rd edition era, like for playing the rogue class? Did you make a thief or a rogue in 3rd edition or 3.5 or Pathfinder? Which of those do you prefer? Let me know what your thoughts on, like, did you feel like you had enough skill points for your rogue in 3.0 and 3.5? So let me know all that in the comments below. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And we'll see you for the conclusion in this series. And I think going forward, this is probably the way that we will tackle this series. They're longer videos, but there's fewer of them. Instead of doing each edition individually like we did for a couple of the classes, we're just going to kind of bundle eras together. So the next video in this series will feature the 4th edition Rogue, the 2024 5th edition Rogue, and the Pathfinder Remastered Rogue. So we'll see that in the conclusion to this series. And I'm going to put up a poll, actually, for what class should be next in the Through the Ages series, based off of the ones that we've taken a look at here already. So thank you so very much for your time. I truly appreciate it, and we will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.